Excellent. Well, I'm told I have 10 minutes. The talks have been getting progressively quicker, so this will be very quick. There's a lot of slides. I'm Brett Sheffield from GladServe. We do hosting and infrastructure, and this talk came out of a discussion on TechMeetup list about whether backup MXs were a good idea or not. Those of you who've set up your own mail servers will know that there's no definitive guide to doing so. Basically, what you get is a menu. You get to choose some options, what you're going to do in terms of preventing spam, whether you're going to use grey listing, what you're going to do. What you choose depends largely on your target. A lot of people get it wrong. Who gets it wrong? Basically you lot. That's why I'm talking to you. Is because techies are often very specialised. They're PHP programmers or whatever, very clever, very technically adept, can read a how-to on grey listing, but maybe don't spend as much time thinking about whether it's a good idea or not. So, the aim of this talk is to get you thinking, not in technical detail, but give you a brief overview of an approach that I think can be very effective. Spam is unsolicited commercial email, mostly. Most of it's commercial. Why is it a problem? Well, according to Semantic last year, 90% of email on the internet is spam. ComTouch, an Israeli company, was saying 75 to 90% this year. Some more figures, 220 billion, US billion, emails a day are sent, apparently. Of that, 183 billion of those are spam. So, yes, it's a problem. We want to fix it. Why do they do it? Why on earth do they spam and send out all this stuff? Llamas. I took a photograph of a woman with a llama, and she came up to me and she said, "I want the money. And so does spammers. When you get an email, it's often not easy to tell what the point of it is. It's a spam. It's not always clear why or how they're trying to get your money in this particular instance. There are a few things that spam tries to achieve. This isn't exhaustive, but either they directly ask you for money, they try and sell you something, Nigerian scams, etc. Some is not directly trying to get cash, it's sending out malware, but this all leads back to cash. What that malware does, sets up botnets, infects PCs, so that they can send out more spam, or so that they can attack a network and get paid for it, or do something else with that. The other thing they might be trying to do is validate their address list so they can send you some more targeted spam later. Nigerian 419ers are named after the section of the Nigerian legislation that deals with this sort of thing. Basically, you get promised lots of cash, you give them a little bit of cash to prove the account's real, and then they supposedly give you lots of money. Like most things, most scams, it works on people's greed. Most spam is trying to either sell you something that's embarrassing to obtain, like Viagra, illegal, or they're promising you something that you want. You can't con an honest man. This feeds into that. So what can we do? Basically, fighting spam is a bit of an arms race. Spammers will do one thing, email admins will do something to try and fight it. A lot of techniques are based around what we know about the spam itself. I think this is the least effective way of fighting spam. This is what Spam Assassin and so on is about. It's looking at the content of an email, using Bayesian techniques and so on to find out the probability of spam, certain words being spam. There's a better way. What we know about spam is quite fuzzy, basically, whereas what we know about... Okay, let me cover this one briefly. It's a Scunthorpe problem. Basically, 1996, AOL were a little restrictive with people from this town signing up to their online services. Google made the same mistake in 2004. It's the sort of problem that comes with dealing with substrings and fighting content. So, I'd rather deal with what we know about spammers, because that's a constant. They're after money. Basically, like any marketing, it's about dealing, it's about conversion rates. It's about a targeted campaign is going to get you higher conversion rates. Untargeted campaign is going to have much lower conversion rates. Spammers send lots of email. That's a whole lot of spam. So what we know about them is they need to take shortcuts. And the best time to catch them is at SMTP time, which is when they're connected to your server. After that point, there's a lot less you can do. If you've already received the email, it's too late. Basically, ISPs have some major costs, one of which is bandwidth. If you've already received the email, you've paid for the data. It's too late. They also pay for power. CPU draws power, takes up space in racks, etc. If you're processing email, scanning content, it's using CPU. If you've received it, you're storing it on disk. There's only so many of those you can stuff into one server. So what we do, email, like many things on the internet, is a protocol. And we enforce the RFCs that define that protocol. Spammers are taking shortcuts. They don't always follow the rules. Unfortunately, there are some people other than spammers that take shortcuts. People like Hotmail who don't have postmaster addresses and so on. So we've got to be careful which rules we enforce. Some of the methods we've got available to us at SMTP time. Actually, this one's before SMTP time. We want to drop this spam as soon as we possibly can. This is a technique that lets us drop the spam before the spammer is even connected to us. It's not popular with some, but in my experience of using it, it doesn't cause problems. The way email works is it will connect to MX servers in priority order. So if you've got a low numbered, like a 0 or 5 numbered MX server, that's where a server trying to send mail to you should go first. If that's fake, if that's pointed at a real IP address that doesn't have anything listening on it, a lot of spammers won't even bother to retry. That's a spam you don't get. You don't even get the connection. Conversely, and this is one of the reasons why backup MXs are such a bad idea, the highest priority server should never be touched. If that's fake, if you've got your low priority server which is fake, you've got some real ones in the middle, there's no way you should ever get to your highest priority server. So if that's fake as well, a lot of spammers will try and go for the highest priority one first on the basis that it's probably a backup MX, doesn't have the same level of stringent checks, so there's another one you don't see. The next thing we get, when the spammer first connects to our server, before they send us any commands, we should send them a 200 ready to say, it's time for, talk to us. If they send anything before that, drop it. They're a spammer. Next part we've got is hello or elo, depending on which RFC you're reading. This has various rules defining it. It should be the fully qualified domain name of the server. It's often not, but there are certain rules you can enforce here. Just be careful about which ones, because a lot of people get this wrong. Often if you see something like localhost, localhost.local domain, or just a host name, my computer or whatever, that will be part of a botnet and is not a real mail server. The next thing we get is the envelope sender, who the spammer is claiming to be, and we can check that address, make sure it's real. We can also check that they've got a postmaster address. Now, this is the simplest of all spam checks. Check that the address they're trying to deliver to is real. This is only really a problem if you're running a backup MX again, because often a backup MX is some friendly ISP down the road who doesn't actually know who your user accounts are. And if they just accept anything for your domain, you get the spam. Finally, we get the data, we get the headers, we get the body of the email, the payload, and we can check that. This is the last bit. Hopefully we've got rid of the spam by now. As I say, backup MX is usually a bad idea. You've got a commitment as a postmaster to either bounce the message or deliver it. People expect when they send an email that it's either going to get through or they're going to get some notification that it's not got through. Let me explain. It's all about backscatter, and this slide is very near the end. Ooh, I'm on time. 30 seconds. Basically, this is your server here. This is your ISP's outgoing SMTP server. This server knows who you are because you're connected to your ISP's ADSL connection, or you've logged in with a username and password. They know that you're real, that the address that you're sending from is real, and that they can deliver a bounce message to you. After this point, once you cross this sort of line here, this trust line, nobody knows who you are anymore. You can't bounce a message. This server connects to say this, which is a backup MX, to deliver your message, and it's got a connection there. If it wants to refuse the message, all it has to say is 550, go away, I don't want your message. Then this server knows it didn't get through and can deliver the bounce message correctly. After this has accepted the email, we have no knowledge. This server doesn't know who you are. All it's got is your envelope sender. It has no way of delivering a message back to you. So if a spammer has sent this message through and has faked the address, sent it from Anand, sent it from his address, then you get this bounce message back to Anand. He didn't send the message, why is he getting this email? That's called backscatter. And as we know, spammers send lots and lots of spam, so poor Anand might get 1,000, many thousands of emails in his box. Some misguided email admins will even block Anand's account because they think it's him that's sending the spam. So this is why this kind of backup and primary MX arrangement is a really bad idea. There's lots of other techniques you can use to block spam. Spamhouse.org runs a very good block list. They will list all of the dynamic IPs that ISPs have advertised on their PBL. They do a spammers IP block list, they do an exploits block list, and they do another one for web domains. rfcignorant.org lists places like applesme.com that don't follow the rules. Let's skip grey listing. Sender policy framework. This is supposed to be the answer to spam. It isn't. Basically, as the owner of a domain, you publish some records, some DNS records that say which IPs are allowed to send email from that domain. So if you get an email from an address that is not on that list, then you know it's faked. Unfortunately, it's so easy to sign up for a gmail.com address, etc. Spammers are usually sending from the real thing. Also, they can register imaspammer.com and send it directly to you, so it really doesn't solve the problem. Spammers can have SPF records too. This is something I've set up, grbl.info. It's a free service. All it does is map an IP address to a country, as published by RIPE, and gives you a list you can check against at the time you're sending and receiving email. So what we use it for some of our customers, who have most of their customers in the UK, is to exempt UK addresses from certain checks on the basis that they're in the same country, so we can go after them and prosecute them if we want. There's not as much spam originating from the UK as there are from some parts of the world, and some of our customers are very sensitive about having false positives. They don't want real emails to be blocked.
There was some stuff that was being talked about in the crypto world about how you were going to get DNS records that were crypto authorised so that you could prove that this was a proper mail server. Did anything come of that? Because I can't remember.
Yes, it's out there, it's live.
Anybody use it?
Increasingly, yes. .com's been signed, .uk's been signed. It's DNSSEC is what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Are you talking about that or domain keys?
I don't know. I don't know enough about it to know what I'm talking about.
Domain keys is basically take a set of headers, create a calculated hash across them, and insert that record into DNS. And that's used by Google and Yahoo when they're setting outbound mail.
Right. There's another technique for detecting fake bouncers called BATV, bounce address something verification, tag verification, thank you. And that isn't used very often. It's a bit of a pain in the butt when it is. Basically, when an email is sent from your outgoing server, you do a cryptographic hash across that. And so instead of getting the bounce message back to your actual address, you get it back to cryptographic hash dash your email address. And if that doesn't match up, if somebody's trying to send a bounce message back and it doesn't match up to that, then it doesn't get through. Basically, bounce messages are sent from the null sender, to brackets with nothing in them. So, and you must accept from that, so you can't do a sender call out to check that it's real, but you do know whether you sent a message or not. We don't use BATV. Any other questions?
Of whitelisting and these sorts of things. I mean, I guess it's not, whitelisting isn't so good for people who are sensitive to false positives. But
Well, this is the thing. You can whitelist all of your customers, whitelist all of your suppliers, but then the sales team gets upset because there's a new customer who wants to buy something from you and their email gets bounced. So this is where things like girbl.info are quite useful, because you can whitelist a country, or blacklist a country if you want. If you don't want to get any email from the nasty little hobbits in New Zealand, for example, then block them. Matt?
Sorry, that was me objecting. I'm half Kiwi.
Oh, right. I haven't had an email from you for a while.
I have on occasion been inundated with irate emails from people who have apparently been spammed by somebody pretending to be sending emails from my domain.
Backscatter.
Yeah, is there any way to actually completely fake the origination of the email?
Well, yes. If we can go back a couple of slides. Actually, sorry, I'll just cover that. Basically, when the person's connected to your server, they send a mail from command that says this is who it's actually from. That can be faked. That's how backscatter happens. That's why you shouldn't bounce after you've received the email and drop the connection, because you don't actually know that that's real. So yeah, backscatter is a bit of a problem.
Certain mail clients will let you do it over others as well.
Will let you do what?
Will let you do that as well.
Will let you fake it?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, so if you
yes.
yeah, Squirrel for example will always let you fake it if you
Yes.
if the
yeah.
That's almost a good thing though, because it increases the awareness of the ease at which it can be
Yep.
faked.
Yeah. It's
well,
very,
it was
very
called
simple.
Simple Mail Transfer Protocol for a reason.
These protocols were designed at a time when the internet was a lot friendlier. You know, it was a bunch of university guys swapping
quality.
research and this sort of thing, and you know, they're not expecting people to send them stuff because, you know, they know everyone who's connected. They're going to go over and, you know, say, oh, what'd you send me that for? Whereas we don't know everyone on the internet just now.
Do you see what's the problem with like SMTP injection? So somebody's got a web form on their site that's supposed to send an email to whoever owns the site, but it doesn't filter it properly, so it ends up sending multiple. The spammer can like put multiple emails in.
Yeah, this is why things like captchas and so on were invented to prove it's a human, because spammers are trying to send lots of emails. They're probably not doing this by typing. They probably have found that there's an open web form there.
It's a big problem, isn't it?
It is a big problem. We've had to have a word to one or two of our hosted customers about this sort of thing, in that they need to check that their website's configured correctly, so we can help them to do that. Anything else to the pod?
What kind of percentage do you catch through, are you saying that these spammers use clients that implement incorrect protocols and such like? What kind of percentage of spammers actually do that? Because it seems like it'd be really easy just to implement it properly, or to use a library or client.
Well, the trouble is they're trying to send lots and lots of emails. Spammers are either in colos that are friendly to them, they've stuck a server in there, but places like Spamhaus will find out their IP addresses very quickly and block them. So they basically need to pump out emails very, very quickly and move on, either to a new range of IPs or to a new physical location. If they start pumping out spam from a Gmail account or a Hotmail account, these guys are wise to it, and you know, if they see masses of emails coming out of a Hotmail account, they'll just drop it. So they can't do that for terribly long. So they set up botnets, basically by sending out viruses and infecting a bunch of mostly Windows PCs, which will just sit there and obey their commands and send out emails. And again, these things need to be very small, and they don't tend to obey all the RFCs, so we can catch them out with the SMTP checks that we're talking about.
On the other hand, I found some of these RBLs somewhat unresponsive. If you're running a small mail server somewhere funny and it mistakenly is on their RBL, I mean, they're not necessarily the easiest to deal with, and you can find that a lot of the messages that you send get tagged incorrectly as spam and rejected.
Yes, there's a lot of things work on reputation. So if an IP address is only newly assigned, it can be a problem. If it's a newly registered domain, that will count against you, and so on. You're best off using your ISP's mail service for sending, or setting your own up and leaving them sit for a bit. And just having to deal with the fact that places like AOL will say that you've not got a good enough reputation to send email to them. often they'll grey list you for a period of time. They might wait 24 hours before they'll accept your email, figuring that if you're retrying for that long, you're not a spammer.
If you're running an SMTP service, surely you can see that lots of people you're delivering to are getting the same email. Can't you use that as a way of just diagnosing spam?
Well, as the service that's originating the spam, yes. You can see it going out, and as I said, places like
No, but as the one that's delivering it, you can see the same. If you were to do a hash of all the messages coming through, and see that you're
if you're
getting large
processing
volumes.
lots of email, yes.
You can do very cheap hashes.
This is the sort of technique that Gmail's got available, but they do tend to make them different, and they do change very quickly. Fuzzy Bear, it changes very.
But I don't know about other people. I ran half a dozen
before you
email
read it.
requests, and I found.
You want to drop it before you've read it anyway, in the ideal scenario.
Yeah, that's the thing. You've paid for it by that stage. You've paid for the bandwidth, you've paid for the storage, you've paid for the CPU for processing it.
And it's not the ISP's place to look at the user's data. It's an enormous breach of trust.
I'm saying look at a hash of it, but yeah.
But
You've
to
got
calculate
members
the
that-
hash, you have to
About
calculate
7
the
years
hash
ago,
of
that's probably correct, but nowadays almost every email has got a slight variance in it, so that a hash. Yeah.
All right, I
One
think we're going to
man's
have to.
spam is another man's email. We've had marketing companies and casinos and
Keep
clients
going.
and so on. So,
I think we're going to have to wrap it up
to the
here,
pub,
and you
to
can
the curry
continue
house.
this in the pub.